Welcome to Module 22 of the Freedom Ticket. In this module, we're going to be covering what I call the Freedom Ticket Product Test. This is a series of things that I look for when I'm picking and validating potential products to sell on Amazon. Now, everything I'm going to be covering has to do with the U.S. market. So all the numbers are going to be given you, all the parameters are going to be about the U.S. market. A lot of this will apply to Europe and other markets, but some of the numbers will be slightly different. The BSRs and the sales volumes and the rankings and that kind of thing will be a little bit different. But you could apply these same principles with some slight modification in other markets. But everything I'm going to be showing you is going to be for the U.S. market. Now, this is not a magic formula. There's a lot of people out there in a lot of different trainings that say, do these 8 things, and that's the key to success. That's not what I'm telling you here. But these are really good tests and ways to evaluate opportunities of something that might be good to sell on Amazon. You may take a look at this and go, you know what, I see a different angle here. I see a little bit different way I could do this, and that's totally okay. But this is just something I want you to have in mind, to be thinking about, and that can really help you find those really golden products that could do well for you. Now, there are some other factors besides what we're going to go over here that could impact your success. So you may find a product that meets all this criteria, and you get all excited, but if you mess up on product quality, it's going to just kill you. You're going to get bad reviews, and it doesn't matter how much of these tests that you pass when you're evaluating the product. If you don't get the product quality right and put out a good product that solves people's problems, then it doesn't matter. You really got to differentiate the product. You can't just be another Me Too product or a commodity product. This won't really work for commodity products or products that are just another Me Too product. And you really got to optimize your listing. That means having really good keywords, having really good photos and infographics, having a really well-built listing can make a huge difference. And so that's a little bit more subjective, and that's kind of hard to factor in here. But these are 3 things that can dramatically impact your success as well. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and dive into it. I'm going to be going over 16 different tests that I look at when I'm evaluating products. And in a perfect world, I would say that you want about 13 of these to pass. If you get 13 or more of these to pass, that's something that you might really want to consider going deep into and actually potentially launching this product. So let's take a look at how this works. Now, we're going to be referencing a lot in here, a tool called X-Ray. And so if you haven't installed this yet, or the Helium 10 tools, you want to make sure you install that. And when you use the Chrome web browser, a little icon is going to show up in the top right-hand corner, little Helium 10 icon. And when you click on that icon, it's going to bring up a screen that looks something similar to this. And there's several different options here, different tools that you can use, all within the Chrome browser without having to actually go log in to Helium 10 and use the tools at helium10.com. You can use this while you're surfing around on Amazon. And so a lot of it, what we're going to be doing here is using that top one there, that X-Ray product research tool. So a lot of the screenshots I'll be showing you are coming from that. Also, you'll see some from the profitability calculator as well. Now, let's go back and take a look at our example that we've been talking about, this cornhole game. So I would initially go do a search on Amazon for cornhole game, because maybe that's something I'm considering selling. The results come up on Amazon. So what I do, I go where I hit the little icon up in the top right, the Helium 10 Chrome extension, and it's going to pop up something that looks similar to this. And it's a chart that basically takes the data from Amazon combined with a bunch of data that Helium 10 has been collecting over the years. It gives you this really good insight into how these products are selling. Now, these numbers are not dead-on accurate, but they're a pretty good guess, and they're all relative to each other. So if you do this on your product, the numbers might be slightly different, but the point of the whole thing is that they're relative to each other. So it puts things in perspective that way. But when this comes back, it gives me a whole bunch of results here. And one of the things I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to narrow this down a little bit. Now, you'll notice a lot of people, the first thing that their eyes draw to is this over here on the right-hand side. And this is a success score from Helium 10. Now, there's other tools out there that sometimes you'll see something that's a 5-star opportunity or 4-star opportunity. I can tell you with very good certainty that it's very rare on Helium 10 to see a 4 or 5-star. Some of the other tools are a little bit more liberal in their criteria. Helium 10 is very strict in their criteria on what they use to do these star ratings. So if you see something over here that's a 4 or 5-star, you want to probably take a pretty deep look at it. That doesn't mean it's a great product. There could be something, differentiation. There could be something in there, but it means it passed the test and the algorithm. I usually like to look at stuff that's 2 and 3s over here. I find a lot of 2s and 3s. Now, just because if I see one that's a 1, that doesn't mean I eliminate the product. But but if I see a 2 or 3, that's usually a pretty good indicator that I'm going to dive a little bit deeper, and that might be something I want to take a closer look at and run it through the whole Freedom Ticket test. If you're short on time and you're just trying to find a product and you get a 1, that would be maybe something you might want to skip and focus on the 2s and 3s that you see first. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I like to only evaluate what's on page 1. Now, on page 1 on Amazon, it depends on the browser, whether you're using a mobile browser, an iPad, or a desktop, or the category it's in. Amazon's constantly changing. It could be 16 products, it could be 24, it can be 48. There's no set number of how many display on page 1. And Amazon, like I said, Amazon's constantly changing it. But what I like to do is focus on the top 16, and the top 16 organic. Now, if you look here in the column that's under the 31,000, there's 3 things that are highlighted. It says SP. That means that the items in positions 1, 2, and 3 are sponsored products. People are advertising to be in those spots. They're probably making some sales off of that. But for our purposes right here, and those sales do matter, but for our purposes right here, I'm looking strictly at organic opportunities on Amazon. Opportunities where I can find products that are in demand organically and maybe come in here and compete. And I might have to run some ads to be at the top here when I first launch, or maybe I might continue doing that. But I'm going to eliminate those from my evaluation right now. And I'm also, if you look down the lower left in the red box where it's 17 on, I'm not going to really pay too much attention to those right now either. Now, those people are making sales there, but for my evaluation purposes, I'm just going to look at what falls in that top 16. And so what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to delete out the ones that I don't really care about right now. So if you mouse over the number of the position number, you see a little trash can icon. If you just click that, it will actually delete it from the screen here. You can always get it back if you just refresh your browser and redo the search. You can get this whole list back, but I like to just go ahead and delete all the ones that have an SP, and I'll delete anything after 16. Now that might mean you end up with 12 products or 13 products. That's okay. But I like to eliminate anything past that. If you want to make sure you have 16 truly organic, you could go down to, like in this case, number 19, but I just go to the first page to number 16. It's just the way I do it. And once you do that, it's going to look something like this. So you see the 1, 2, and 3 that were in position 1, 2, and 3, they're gone. The numbers of total revenue and some of the averages changed up there because we eliminated some stuff. That's okay. I don't worry too much about that. If you notice up at the top also where it says cornhole game in the top blue bar, they kind of give you an idea of the search volume for that particular keyword right here. 17,296 was the estimated search volume for that keyword. So that's pretty cool too. But now I've got this in a format that I'm going to use to run this through my 16-part test. So this is what I'm going to really pay the most attention to. So number 1 out of this test is I want to see at least 4 products in the top 16 that have a BSR of 10,000 or less. So what you can do is you can come up to the top of the column BSR and just click on it, and that will put them in order. And you notice the order over on the far left-hand side, there's no longer going 4 through 16. They kind of jumbled up there. That's okay. I put them in BSR order just to make it easier to look at this at a glance. And so you can see here that definitely more than 4 of these have a BSR of lower than 10,000. And so that means this particular test passed. The second thing, what that basically tells us is there's good demand on Amazon. That's why we look at this. It tells us that there's a strong demand on Amazon for this particular product. Now, number 2 in the test is I want to see 6 or more products in this list of top 16 that sell at least 300 per month. That's basically 10 units per day. And so if you look at the numbers here, I sort the column by sales, I can see that definitely there's more than 6 of these that are selling at least 10 units per day. So that's a good sign that there's good demand and it's kind of spread out. Number 3 is I want to see that there's not any famous brands. Like if you're selling kitchen stuff, it might be Cuisinart or Oyster, or if you're selling shoes, it could be Nike or Adidas or something like that. These brands that I'm looking at over here are not really famous brands. They might be famous on Amazon or something, but they're not really famous. They're not running advertisements out there. They're not an old brand that's been around for 20, 30, 50 years. Like they're not big brands like Apple or something like that. So I don't see really any big brands over here, but if you were doing something, there's a bunch of well-known brands in there, and it's over half dominated by that. That could make it just a little bit harder to compete. The next thing I'm going to look at in this group is I want to see at least 10 of these guys have less than 500 reviews. So if I sort the review column, I can see that quite a few of them have less than 500 reviews. That's a good thing, because it's very difficult when you first launch your product to actually, you're going to have 0 reviews, and maybe after a month or two, you might be in the 20 to 50, 100 range. It's hard to compete with if there's the top products, if there's a lot of them that have thousands or tens of thousands of reviews. So the fact here that and organically, in these top 16, there's quite a few under 500, even a few down there, 4 of them looks like under 100. That's a good sign that maybe I can come in here. I might not be in the top position, but I should be able to get onto page 1, maybe towards the middle to bottom of page 1, and make some sales and try to start getting some traction. And it'll be a little bit easier to compete versus going up against products that have just tons of reviews, and a lot of products that have tons of reviews. The fifth one I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at the review rate. Now, the review rate on Amazon is how many people actually review the product. So some people will use a program like a follow-up program from Helium 10. Amazon actually sends out some emails inviting people to review a product too. The average review rate, if you don't do anything, is probably about 1%, somewhere in the 1%. Someone that's using a follow-up program and it's well written and well constructed can maybe rise that to 2 or 3%. If you're incentivizing the reviews, which means you're offering to give someone a free product or a discount or something if they write a review, or you're doing some other trick to actually get people to write reviews, that's against the terms of service on Amazon, but there's a lot of people that do that. And so those people oftentimes will get review rates of 5% or more. So basically 1 out of every 20 people. Some of them get even higher. Or maybe they're using a launch service or rebate services that's giving people rebates and also giving those people a little bit extra kind of behind the scenes to write reviews. So the review rate might be 10% or more. That means that there's most likely some sort of manipulation going on. So I like to actually look at the review rate, which right now Helium 10, at the date of this recording, doesn't show you the actual review rate. They show you what's called a review velocity. And the review velocity is a number. It tells you how many new reviews, or how many, not necessarily new, but how many reviews got, what's the number of review change over last month. So in this case, if you look at the top guy, it says review velocity 2 in the red box there. That means his review count went up 2 month over month. He might have lost a review or 2. Amazon might have deleted something, but his review count went up 2. Now, at some point, Helium 10 might actually put this calculation in here for you, but as of right now, you're going to have to do it yourself. It's the review velocity divided by sales. So you're going to take that review velocity, and so like that. Let's look down at the sixth one there, and its review velocity was 7. It's in the yellow there, highlighted, and the sales for the last month was the 967. So you're going to take 7 divided by 967, and that's works out, if you do it on a calculator, like 0.007 or something like that, which is rounded up as 1%. So as you can see here, it doesn't look like there's any crazy manipulation. The other thing I look for is I don't want to see a bunch of negative. So if you look, sometimes the review velocity, if you look in the middle of the screen, the white box next to the left of the yes, I'll show you an example there. Sometimes the review velocity might have negative numbers like this. That means someone lost 178 reviews. What that usually means is Amazon went in and deleted the reviews because they were suspicious of them. The person doing something they shouldn't have been doing. And so if I see 2 or more of these top 16 that have big negative numbers, -2 is not that big a deal, but if 2 or more of them have negative numbers that are greater than 10, that's a warning sign to me that there's some competition that's not really fair on this product, and I might have to fight against them at some point. And so I don't like playing those games. So that's just a big warning sign that I look for. Number 6 in the Freedom Ticket validation test is I'd like to see in these top 16 that 8 or more, so basically 50% of them, have an evaluation score of less than 9. And ideally, it's great if you find a bunch of them. I don't have a set number, but if there's a bunch of them that have a score of less than 6. So how do you get this? You can just go on and click on the ASINs over on the left-hand side of the X-ray, and it'll take you actually open up a window and show you the product on Amazon, and you can actually see the score right there. Now, at some point, Helium 10 might add this to the X-ray tool, so you don't have to click off. But as of this recording, you have to click off. And so I can click off, and I click off on, and it puts a little icon up in the top left corner. And that's the Helium 10's evaluation. So they're saying this listing, based on the criteria that they're looking at, that gets an 8.57 out of 10. And so I would do this for all these 16 that are left. I only show them 4 of them here, but I would do it for all 16. And see how many of them have a score that's less than 9. That means there's room for opportunity. That means they're maybe not doing something right, and I can come in and improve. And if a bunch of these guys have a score less than 6, that means they pretty much suck at Amazon. And so there could be really good opportunity if there's a bunch of them that are doing well that have a score less than 6. Maybe they only have one picture. Maybe their bullet points are short. Maybe they don't have very many keywords in there. Who knows what? But that can be really great opportunities if you find a bunch of them below 6 that are still selling pretty well. The 8th thing in the Freedom Ticket test is I like to see that there's the overall sales. If you add all the sales up at the top 16, is greater than 3,000 a month. So if you look here in the column that's in red, it's pretty obvious. All you got to do is add the first 2, and we're already at over 3,000 a month. So this one definitely there's enough demand. And I like to see that at least one product is not dominating those sales. So if let's say that everything in that red box added up to, let's say, 10,000, and if one product was making 8,000 of those sales, that's 80%. That would mean to me that there's some sort of barrier to entry here. Maybe that person has a patent and they're enforcing it, or maybe they're driving a lot of outside traffic. It's not coming from organically within Amazon. Maybe they're sending a lot of traffic from Facebook or from TV shows or other advertisement. So that tells me that it's a warning sign that maybe this traffic is not coming from within Amazon, and that might not be something I'm willing or able to compete against right now because I don't have that kind of budget or those kinds of plans to do that kind of thing. So that's something I look at right here. Number 9 in this test of 16 is I like to see, are there at least 6 listings or more in this top 16 that have a rating of 4 or less? That means that there's room for improvement. That means that several of these products are selling okay. They got to page 1 on this keyword, but there's issues. And so I can go in and read these reviews and see what people are complaining about and fix it. If everybody's got, the whole page is 4.5 or 5 stars, that's going to make it much harder for me to compete. Doesn't mean you can't compete, maybe if you differentiate right, but it's just going to make it a little bit harder. So that's something I evaluate as well. The 10th one in this test is I'm going to take the top selling ASIN. So I'm going to sort this by sales, not by revenue. Notice I sort this by sales, units sold, not by dollar amount, but by units sold. Now I'm just going to, for this quick test, I'm just going to take a look at the top guy. Now later on when you're doing keyword research, you're going to look a lot more than just the top guy. But right now I'm just going to look at the top guy. And so the top guy is selling about 2,300 or so there a month. So I'm going to go grab his ASIN over on the left-hand side, and I'm going to take that over to Helium 10 Cerebro tool. And what I'm looking for there is that I want to see that what Cerebro is going to do is kind of try to reverse engineer and figure out what this guy might be making his sales on. We don't know specifically because Amazon doesn't release that, but it's our best guess. And so I want to see at least 3 keywords, and these keywords need to have 2 or more words in them. So it can't just be the word like cornhole. It'd have to be like cornhole game or something like that. And I want to see at least 3 of those over 5,000. And I also want to see if there's keyword depth, that there's not just a couple keywords that it's making it sales on, because that means there's less opportunity for me. It's going to be easier for me to compete. But if there's 10 or more relevant keywords that are ranking on page 1 for this guy, when I run Cerebro, that are over 600 a month, that means there's lots of different opportunities and different angles I could actually come in here and maybe compete. I might start with trying to rank on one of these lower keywords and work my way up later on. So if I take this guy's ASIN and go over to Cerebro, this is what it'll look like here. I'm going to paste it up in the top of the Cerebro tool inside Helium 10. And then down where the red boxes are, 3 red boxes towards the bottom, I'm going to put in the search volume, I'm going to put a minimum of 600. And the organic rate, I want to know it's on page 1, so I'm going to put 1 to 16. And like I said earlier, 1 to 24, 1 to 48 might actually be page 1, but for our purposes, I'm just doing 1 to 16. And the word count in the keyword, I want to see at least 2. And then I'm going to hit that apply button and say, actually, I'm going to hit the get keywords first up at the top after I hit an ASIN, and then I'm going to enter these filters and hit the apply button. And it's going to spit back something that looks like this. And these are all the keywords that potentially this guy is making sales on, because he's ranked. If you look in the blue box in the top right side, his organic rank is in the top 16 for all these different keywords. So most likely, these keywords are the ones that are most likely contributing to most of his sales. And so I can see the volume there, the search volume in the red box. It meets my criteria. There's definitely more than 3 that have over 5,000, and definitely over 10 that have more than 600. So that means there's a lot of different ways that I can sell this product, and a lot of different ways people are typing in to compete, to find it, and then there's different ways that I can compete. So that's the number 10 in the Freedom Ticket test. Number 11 is I want to make sure I actually can make money on this thing. So maybe you've already run the spreadsheet from one of the earlier modules or from one of the other spreadsheets, but the net margin, I want to see at least 30% or more margin on this. And typically, just as if you're just ballparking this, typically you need to sell for about 4 to 5. Your manufacturing cost needs to be about 4 to 5 times your retail price if you're selling something under $100. So if you're able to manufacture it for $5, you really need to be selling it for $20 to $25 at a minimum to have a good chance to compete and have these kinds of margins, have money for advertising, have money for overhead. There are people that sell for 2x or 3x, but they usually don't make money, or if they are making money, they're doing it sheerly based on volume. But it also gives them very little wiggle room, if something goes wrong or competitors come in. And I like to avoid retail prices. I personally I don't go below $20. $19.95 is the lowest I will go, but I highly recommend you not go below $15 if you can avoid it at all. Maybe you don't have the budget and that's just where you got to be, and that's okay. But I really don't like being under $15 because there's just so much competition, and the barriers to entry are much lower because people are buying products that cost 50 cents or $1 or $2, and it's just so easy for people to get in there. And so you might do well for a few months, and then it fades really quickly on you. So you should be able to calculate your net profit. You take your retail price and the cost, and then divide those out, and I'll give you your profit margin. There's actually 38% in this case. This came from an accounting program here. You also want to look at your ROI. I like to see an ROI of at least 100%. We talked about this in another module. The higher, the better. I personally go for like 150 and above, but you should try to get at least 100% if you can. And ROI is a profit divided by investment. And remember, we talked about this other. Compounding is the key to rapid growth on Amazon without having to take out a lot of additional loans and extra money. That's how you can build your business really fast, by picking products that have a good ROI. I mean, this is just an example here. If item A sells for $10 with a $3 profit, $3 landing cost, and $4 in FBA fees, to make a $3,000 profit on this, you need to sell about 1,000 of these. So that means you're going to have to invest about $3,000. You're going to profit about $3,000, and your ROI is 100%. That's not bad. But what if you went with item B? It sells for $150. It's got a $60 profit, $30 landing cost, and $60 in FBA fees. Maybe this is a big, heavy item or something, refrigerator or something like that, dorm refrigerator. But so to make $3,000, you only need to sell 50 of these guys. So your sunk cost, because it cost you $30, is only $1,500, and your profit is now $3,000. So same profit, but you had to invest less money up front, so it took less money out of your pocket. You had to order less units, but your ROI is 200%. So this is why this is so important to pay attention to this. Now, if you haven't run the spreadsheets or the accounting stuff, there's a way to actually do this, and I'll show you in just a second. And we've talked about this as well in some other modules, but inventory turnover is another big key. You want to try to turn your inventory over at least 4 times per year. That means you're reordering at least 4 times per year. 6 or more is ideal. But if you're ordering the products and it takes you a whole year to sell that, that's really going to hurt your ROI. You want to kind of be more like a just-in-time inventory and just plan this out so that you can you're basically ordering every 3 months or every 2 months. Some people can get this down to every month, but 4 times per year. That way, you're working and turning your money. It's not just tied up. Now, if you haven't run the spreadsheets yet, or you don't know how to calculate this, Helium 10, the Chrome extension, you can hit the profitability calculator on one of the top products, pick one of the best-selling ones, just to get a rough ballpark idea. And if you hit that calculator, it'll pull some of the information from Amazon, like it did for this guy here. It pulls in the dimensions and the weight, and you can play with this price, the selling price. Maybe you're going to sell for more or less, and maybe your cost is going to be a little bit more, but you can just get a ballpark estimate of what the margin would be and the ROI, which is down at the bottom. So if you don't have the hardcore numbers, this is just a way to approximate it when you're evaluating. And the cost that they put in here is not what it actually costs. It's just a guess. So you might go over to Alibaba or somewhere and try to get a little bit better price of what that might be, or maybe you're going to adjust that because you're like, look, in this particular case, it's a 75% ROI, but you're like, okay, I need to get 100% ROI. So you can play with that $23.40 number and change that to, I don't know what it'd be. Say if you changed it to $18, maybe that ROI at the bottom changes to 100 something percent. If that's the case, then when you talk to your supplier, I need to actually try to find something that's $18 or negotiate it down to $18, or I need to sell it for a different price. If it's $23.40 and you just can't beat that, maybe you need to sell it for $129 and justify it with good pictures, or maybe you're putting an extra case with it, or some extra bean bags, or whatever it may be, to try to get that down. But that's a quick way to estimate that. Now, number 12 in the Freedom Ticket test is I want to know that sales are on the uptick. I don't want to invest in something where it's kind of run its course, or most of these things are not doing, the sales are kind of going down. You can use Google Trends or some other programs to kind of see that in the general world. But here on Helium 10, you can use the X-ray tool. Under the sales, there's a little histogram there. There's little charts in the red box. And so I want to see at least about half of these guys are on the uptick. So if you click on that little graph that's under sales, it'll pull up something that looks like this. And what I do is I click on the all-time up at the top right, and then I click on I click on 1 year at the top right. And so I want to see what the sales are for the last 1 year, and I want to see that line that's kind of highlighted in yellow on the upward trend or kind of flat. I don't want to see that going down. Now, if it's going down for a couple products, that's okay. But as a general, you want to look at the general market of these top 16 and see if the general market is either kind of steady or going up. If a couple guys are going down, that's okay, because they may be they're losing momentum, or they raised the price or something. But I want to see that the general market is going up. At least half of them are going up. And now, if this would be a case here, on the next one, where I want to also make sure that these listings are not all really old, because if out of these top 16, most of these listings have been on Amazon for more than 2 years, they kind of entrenched, and they kind of have a pretty big competitive advantage. It's going to be kind of hard to unseat them. So you can do the same thing with here, and you can actually see by clicking the all-time how long have they been selling on Amazon. And you can actually then go over it, and you can mouse over, and as you mouse over across that line, it will show you the date that Helium 10 started tracking. They may have actually started selling back in 2013 here, but Helium 10 started tracking it. So the data goes only as far back as Helium 10 has it. But you can see here that you want to make sure that there's quite a few listings in here that are less than 2 years old. That means there's room to compete, because if they're old listings, it's just going to be harder to knock them off. The number 14 in the test is I want to make sure that the sellers, whoever's selling, is not doing some sort of manipulation. So I want to make sure that when they started selling, they were basically down at 0 reviews. They didn't take over somebody else's listing and start with 100 reviews, and that means I'm up against some of these hackers or something that are going to be doing crazy stuff. And so if I see a recent review burst on several of the products, if it's on 1 or 2, it's okay. But if several of the products have a review burst, like this one right here, when I click on review count on X-Ray, if you click on the number, it brings up this chart. And you can see kind of how many reviews, and Celium 10's been tracking it. They started back, it looks like this one in 2017. And you can mouse over and you can actually see what the review count was on any day and what the rating was. And you can see here that this guy kind of spiked in July. And that means he may have done a promotion. He may have done some sort of manipulation. I don't know, but that's just a red flag. That doesn't mean don't do it. It's just something you need to be aware of, that someone's out there doing something to try to boost their sales, and you're going to have to be aware that you may be having to compete against that. Now, this is an example of one here where this one most likely is some sort of review or ASIN manipulation. You take a look at the review history. They started back in 2016. It looks like it pretty close to zero, but then they tanked. They lost all their reviews. Somewhere there in July of 2018, they went from about 300 or so, basically down to zero. And then all of a sudden in late 2018, they started climbing back up, and they've been climbing rapidly. So there's one or two things here. Either they're selling a ton of units and they're just naturally getting reviews because they're selling just a ton more units, or they're doing some sort of manipulation. So this is just a caution flag that you just need to be aware of. If there's several people that are doing this, is that something you might be having to compete against. Number 15 is I want to look at the pricing of these items. They're on page 1. And if they're all within a few dollars of each other, I showed you this in another module. If they're all, if these were all like, say, $7.99, $8.99, $9.99, maybe one of them was $13.99, those are all within a really close range to each other. That means it's going to be much harder to compete. You're going to have to compete on price. And maybe you're okay with that, but that makes it a lot harder and it doesn't give you as much wiggle room. But if you look at this one, there's pricing all over the place. There's 113, 139, 63, 51, 95, 59, 30, 39. So it's all over the place. I love when I find products like this because it means I have a lot more options on how I want to differentiate and position my product. So this is a good thing. And speaking of differentiation, you got to differentiate. I mean, like the guy on the left is putting his bully sticks, these are dog treats, putting them in a bag, a plastic bag with a label. Versus the one on the right, it's got a dog with a chef hat, and the sticks are a lot bigger, and they're like in a cigar box, and all that kind of stuff. So product differentiation is crucial. We'll talk a lot more about that in other modules. But do you see a way that you can make this thing different, not just be another Me Too thing? Now, there's some other considerations you got to think about. These are not part of the test, but just some other things that to be thinking about when you're going through this. A product that's not easy to find on Alibaba, it can actually be good, because that means other people probably aren't finding it either. It means it's either maybe something that's kind of new, and the factories haven't gotten ahead of it yet and started putting it all over Alibaba, or maybe it's something that's just pretty unique. So that can be a good thing. Lots of similar products to whatever you're selling are not on the deal sites or the rebate sites. There's sites out there that do rebates to help people when they buy something. They offer them a percentage of the money or all the money back within like 30 days or something, or some people do PayPal. There's sites that you can go to and you can look and see what's offered there. If you see quite a few, this happened recently with not too long ago, weighted baby blankets like a year or two ago were pretty popular. And people started getting into it. But if you go to the deal sites or the rebate sites, you can see them all over the place there. It means a lot of people are trying to launch these things. It's going to be really competitive. Deal sites, there's some of the launch services have their own Facebook deal sites, and then the rebate sites are other ones that you just want. If there's a lot of similar stuff to your product on there, it means a lot of people are probably launching this stuff, and you may not want to do it. If you go to Pinterest or Etsy and you see with the trending items, there's some apps and stuff you can install that will help you with that. It's a little bit more advanced, so we don't cover that right here. But trending Pinterest or Etsy items that are not on Amazon can be great things to investigate. Items that are sourced from countries other than China also can be good. Going to India, or going to Turkey, or going to the U.S., or going somewhere else, because it eliminates a lot of your competition. Because especially all the Chinese competition that's doing some crazy stuff, they're less likely to source from somewhere besides China. Now, another thing is if two or more in the top 16, the top 16 that we just went through, have been selling at least twice your initial investment for 3 months, that can be a good sign too that you might have the proper money and the capability to actually compete here. Also, the thing you can look at, you can do this with the profitability tool that I showed you just a little bit ago, is what if you are able to make your product slightly different? Maybe the size of this product is a large standard size, and it's I don't know, 17 inches, let's say, and you are able to find a way to make this smaller. Maybe it's with the packaging, or maybe it's a way that you figure out we can fold something over inside the box, and we can get this from 17 inches to 10 inches, or 17 inches to 15 inches. That would be 10%. And what that would maybe do is then put you from large standard oversize to just regular standard oversize. And something like that could knock off 2, 3, 5, who knows what, several bucks off of your fulfillment costs on Amazon, which just increases your product. So you want to consider those kinds of things too. If there's a way to re-engineer the packaging or the way the product is put together to make it smaller, or lighter, so that you can actually get down into a lower fulfillment bracket on Amazon, and you can have extra margin. Also, if you see a lot of products in the top 16 that are FBM, fulfilled by merchant, that means they're not being shipped from an Amazon warehouse. It's not sold and shipped by Amazon. It's coming from somebody else's warehouse. Sometimes if you put those to FBA or something similar to FBA, that can be a great competitive advantage. Because there's a lot of people that they don't want to order, even Seller Fulfilled Prime. They don't want to order from FBM because they're like, I don't know, trust this guy. I want my stuff tomorrow or the next day, and I don't know if this guy's sleeping. He's going to wait till the weekend's over to ship this out to me. I don't know. They know that with like Amazon FBA, it's like clockwork. So sometimes you can find great opportunities by just finding products that are doing well FBM and just sell them something similar FBA. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, but if you already have your trademark done, you'll have something called brand analytics. So this is only for those of you that have your trademark actually filed. You have the actual number back. If you did in the US, it took you probably 8 or 9 months. If you did in Europe, it might take you 2 or 3. And you've actually submitted it to Amazon. They've approved you, and you're in the brand registry program on Amazon. You have something called brand analytics. And so you can use that too when in validating products. This gets a little advanced, and we cover that more in the Helium 10 Elite, but here are just a few things you can consider if you do have access to this, or maybe a buddy. If you don't, maybe you have a friend that's selling on Amazon, you can ask them to check this out for you, if you're okay to share what you're doing with them. Are there at least 10 or more keywords that are relevant to your product that that are under a 1 million SFR? SFR stands for Search Frequency Rating. If they're under a million, are there at least 10? And also, do any of the top 3 click share in brand analytics have 0% conversion share? That's a bad sign. That means there's probably some sort of manipulation. If they're getting a lot of clicks, but they're virtually getting no buys, that means they're doing something like add to carts, or they're doing some sort of trying to game the system. And so that's some product that you might want to shy away from, because there's some people out there doing some crazy stuff, and it could affect you. And the other thing, if you have brand analytics, is take a look at the conversion share. I'll show you this for the top 3. Now, some of this you guys may be lost. If you don't have brand analytics, you're like, what the heck is he talking about? Don't worry about it. You'll get it once you have your trademark, and you can come back and review this, or you can, if you're in Helium 10 Elite, we cover it more there. But the conversion share, and you want to take a look at that in the top 3, and you want to make sure that one guy is not dominating that. If one guy's got like 80% of the conversion share, and the other guys are splitting another guy's got 5%, another guy's got 6%, and the other 9% split between guys in positions 4 through 100 or whatever, that means it's probably going to be kind of hard to unseat that guy. It means he's doing something really right, or it's very brand driven or something along those lines. So that's some other things that you can consider. So this is the Freedom Ticket Validation Test, and like I said, it's not a magic pill. You can make up your own rules and modify this. Sometimes I'll see something that may only pass 12 of these 16. But I know that if I differentiate it in a certain way, I have that gut feeling or that instinct, and I can still compete here. That's okay. But I hope this has actually helped you in evaluating products and just choosing what you might want to look deeper into, and actually start trying to source and find suppliers, and actually try to figure out what are the real actual keywords that I should really go after. and really take a deep dive. This is just this top level surface, and you'll see in some of the later modules we'll start getting deeper and deeper and deeper into really flushing these out. But you might start with a list of 20 of these products that you found, and you run through the Freedom Ticket test, and maybe that knocks the 20 down to 7. And then you focus on those 7, and from those 7, maybe you pick 1 or 2 that you're going to actually launch. Or maybe all 7 are great, and you're just going to space them out over time. But hopefully this has helped you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next module.